Hello, everyone. Here's something that might surprise you. The deadliest school massacre in American history didn't happen recently. It was in 1927 when a school board treasurer named Andrew Kehoe killed 43 people, including 38 children, using carefully planned explosives in Bath Township, Michigan. Due to financial troubles, resentment, and a deep-seated grudge against the local government and community. Kehoe, a former school board treasurer and farmer, was struggling with mounting debt, particularly due to a mortgage on his farm and rising taxes, which he blamed on the school district's decision to fund the construction of a new school. He believed that the school's property taxes were financially ruining him.
Hi, Chris. Kehoe had a history of conflicts with his neighbors and the school board, often engaging in disputes over taxes and financial management. He was known for being controlling, argumentative, and unwilling to compromise. His anger escalated when he lost his position as the school board treasurer, further fueling his belief that the local government was against him.
Facing foreclosure and unable to control his financial situation, Kehoe meticulously planned his attack. Over several months, he planted explosives in the school and on his property. On the morning of May 18, 1927, he first set fire to his farm, then detonated the explosives at Bath Consolidated School, killing 38 children and 6 adults. Shortly after, he drove his car, rigged with more explosives, to the school and detonated it, killing himself and others nearby.
Kehoe left behind a chilling sign on his property that read, "Criminals are made, not born." His actions were driven by a mix of personal failure, financial despair, and a desire for revenge, making the Bath school disaster one of the deadliest school attacks in U.S. history. That's such a chilling piece of history that most people don't know about. And what's really striking is how these patterns of violence keep repeating throughout American history, just taking different forms.
Well, you know what's fascinating about studying these notorious criminals? How they reflect the anxieties and issues of their particular era. Like Al Capone emerging during Prohibition, when the ban on alcohol created this perfect environment for organized crime to flourish.
The way Capone built his empire is remarkable. At its peak, his operation was worth about $100 million, which would be over $1 billion today. Though it's pretty ironic that after all the violence, they got him on tax evasion.
Right. And speaking of surprising endings, most people don't realize that Capone spent his final years fishing in Florida, his mind destroyed by neurosyphilis. But you know what really interests me? How some of these criminals managed to maintain these completely normal-seeming public lives.
Like John Wayne Gacy? Here's someone who was photographed with the First Lady while he had bodies buried under his house.
Exactly. And he was active in local politics, ran a successful business, and even performed as a clown at children's parties. The police found a receipt for 1,000 pounds of lime in his house. He was using it to cover up the decomposing bodies in his crawl space, while maintaining this perfectly respectable public image.
So what do you think it is about these cases that continues to fascinate people decades later?
Well, I think it's partly because they force us to confront uncomfortable truths about human nature. Take Ted Bundy. Here's someone who worked for the Washington State Republican Party, was well-educated, charismatic. He completely shattered people's preconceptions about what a killer looks like. Ted Bundy used deception and manipulation to lure his victims, relying on charm, social engineering, and feigned vulnerability. One of his most well-known tactics was pretending to be injured or disabled, often wearing a fake cast or sling, to ask women for help carrying items or loading his car, only to overpower them once they were close.
He also impersonated authority figures, such as police officers, to gain trust and lure women into his vehicle. Bundy's charisma and persuasive nature made him appear non-threatening, allowing him to approach women in public places like college campuses, libraries, and parks. He frequently targeted victims in parking lots, fabricating emergencies, or asking for assistance with his car. In some cases, he entered homes and dorm rooms to attack women while they were asleep. Occasionally, Bundy sought out victims who resembled past relationships, using familiarity to his advantage. His ability to manipulate trust and create false security played a significant role in his crimes.
And then you've got cases like Jim Jones and the People's Temple, which really expose how vulnerable people can be to manipulation. Jones actually started as a respected community leader in Indianapolis, fighting for civil rights and helping the poor. The recordings from that final day in Jonestown, where he convinced over 900 people to die, they're just devastating.
That kind of mass manipulation seems to be a recurring theme. Look at Charles Manson and how he managed to convince his followers to commit those horrible murders.
Speaking of manipulation and ideology, Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber, is such an interesting case. Here's a brilliant mathematician who became this anti-technology zealot, living in a tiny cabin while waging a nationwide bombing campaign. His own brother recognized his writing style in that manifesto and had to make the impossible decision to turn him in.
The way these cases intersect with broader social issues is fascinating. Like Timothy McVeigh and the Oklahoma City bombing, how he twisted patriotism into this horrific act of domestic terrorism.
You know what's really striking about all these cases? The warning signs that were missed or ignored. Andrew Kehoe had been making threats and behaving erratically for months before the Bath school disaster. He'd even removed all his valuables from his property in the days leading up to it.
That's why studying these cases is so important, isn't it? It's not just about the sensational aspects, it's about recognizing patterns that might help prevent future tragedies.
Exactly. And when we look at more recent cases like Adam Lanza and Sandy Hook, we see similar patterns of isolation and warning signs that somehow didn't trigger enough concern. These stories, as difficult as they are to discuss, really underscore the importance of mental health resources and support systems in our communities. They're not just historical curiosities, they're lessons we need to learn from.
Thanks for joining us and see you next time.